For years, China had viewed the decline of Taiwan and later Japan as an inevitable fate. But now, it has had a bitter awakening, believing itself to be the absolute ruler of the Pacific. With trillions of dollars worth of warships, next-generation jets darkening the skies, and nuclear submarines once thought invincible, Beijing is now watching the collapse of a plan it believed to be flawless. But the real surprise is that this show of force, which has paralyzed China's massive military, did not come solely from Taiwan. The United States made that shocking military move that no one expected. The USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group, ordered to sail from San Diego to the Middle East to provide urgent support against the Iranian blockade, had its course abruptly changed in mid-April. The USS Boxer and USS Comstock, two of the U.S. Navy's most powerful naval forces, along with the accompanying 11th Marine Regiment, steered directly into the heart of the Pacific. This massive combat fleet, which had been operating with strategic silence around Guam and Saipan in recent weeks, made a fully equipped transit through the Suruga Strait near the Philippines on April 26th. This unexpected maneuver demonstrated the U.S.'s determination to strengthen its forward presence in the 7th Fleet at all costs. Meanwhile, the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines are conducting live missile strikes and beach landing exercises on an island just off the northern tip of Taiwan. China responded by sailing the aircraft carrier Loing, carrying J-15 fighter jets, and reaffirming Taiwan as a red line. But all of this is just the tip of the iceberg because the U.S. recently took one of the most striking steps in recent times against China's targeting of Taiwan. Washington, from 10,000 kilometers away, with a striking military support bridge, closed all of China's entry and exit points to Taiwan. Even the strongest regional allies like Japan and South Korea are in great astonishment. They had not even considered the possibility that the U.S. could paralyze the Chinese military without firing a single shot. But Washington is covering the island nation that the Chinese military has been dreaming of capturing for decades with an impenetrable armor. Taiwan is no longer a lonely and helpless place defending only its shores. The island nation has now turned into a massive assault fortress, equipped with the U.S.'s most lethal weapons, HIMARS rocket systems, ATACMS missiles that know no borders, M109A7 howitzers, and the M1A2T Abrams tanks whose delivery is being completed these days are now in the field. Harpoon coastal missiles and deadly Javelin systems are waiting to hunt their targets on Taiwanese soil. The barrels of all these weapons are aimed directly at the heart of China. Beijing's navy, which it has taken pride in for decades, is now helplessly within the direct targeting range of this steel storm. If the Xi administration crosses that red line in the Pacific, the consequences will be militarily severe. Now, even China's own coasts and commercial ports are not safe from the devastating effects of war. Because the U.S. is virtually turning Taiwan into a massive, unsinkable military base in the middle of the ocean, these state-of-the-art weapons piled into the region have the capacity to vaporize every single Chinese military element within seconds. Taiwan's unique mountainous geography serves as natural shelters for these massive weapon systems. Mobile batteries planned to be hidden in underground tunnels can be perfectly concealed even from China's military satellites. In other words, that famous Porcupine doctrine that Taiwan has been developing for years is transforming into a flawless destruction machine with these weapons. For China, this entire nightmare scenario began with the United States' $6.6 billion aid package to Taiwan. The backbone of this agreement was the higher rocket systems. Exactly 82 brand new hires are being added to the Taiwanese Army's inventory. The 420 ATACMS ballistic missiles that make up the ammunition for these systems are completely rewriting the rules of war in the region. Because on military maps, the Taiwan Strait is just a narrow waterway 180 kilometers wide. This narrow corridor means a perfect firing range for ATACMS batteries. With a 300-kilometer range, these ballistic missiles possess a devastating power that will reach the Chinese mainland in seconds. Featuring the ability to evade enemy radars, these missiles mercilessly descend on their targets at multiples of the speed of sound. The primary logistical staging areas the Chinese army would likely use for an invasion are militarily obvious. The strategic Xiamen and Fuzhou ports in Fujian province now sit directly in Taiwan's crosshairs. If Chinese amphibious assault ships attempt to gather in these ports, their end will be a disappointment, because missiles suddenly fired from Taiwan's Penghu Islands are capable of turning this massive fleet into piles of scrap iron before they can even leave the port. The strategic detail that truly keeps Chinese generals awake at night is the high mobility of the HIMARS batteries. The Taiwanese army can hide these missiles in forested areas within seconds using shoot-and-scoot tactics. The HIMARS will survive any potential airstrike initiated by China completely unscathed and instantly launch a counter-retaliation. Mounted on special wheeled armored vehicles, these systems can change position in just 5 minutes after firing. On the other hand, China's nightmare is just beginning. With U.S. military support, the Taiwanese army is not only improving its long-range strike capability in a potential war, they are also transforming their coastline into an impenetrable steel wall against landing craft. Exactly 60 M109A7 Paladin self-propelled howitzers are being added to the inventory of the Taiwanese army. Every single Chinese landing craft that dares to approach Taiwanese shores will be subjected to a heavy barrage of shells because the highly precise GPS-guided shells of these howitzers have the power to send Chinese armor to the dark depths of the sea before they can even reach the beach. Capable of firing 10 rounds per minute, these systems can literally turn that long coastline into a fiery hell. The uninterrupted digital communication the batteries establish with each other can ensure hundreds of shells rain down on a single Chinese ship simultaneously. The main line of defense at sea against China is entrusted to the deadly hit rate of the legendary Harpoon missiles. By 2028, exactly 100 launcher batteries will be delivered to Taiwanese soil. These anti-ship missiles, with a range of approximately 150 kilometers, are capable of mercilessly hunting Chinese naval convoys in the open ocean. Skimming the surface of the sea and flying extremely low, the Harpoon missiles will remain undetected by the air defense radars of Chinese ships until the very last second. Any lucky Chinese units that manage to overcome all this defensive shield and reach the shore will face the ruthless face of land warfare. Because the latest batch of 28 M1A2T Abrams tanks, unloaded from ships, secretly docked at Taipei port, were transported under black covers with police and military G-arm escort on civilian carriers to the Armored Units Command in Hsinchu. These walking steel fortresses, part of a massive $1.25 billion deal, bringing the total number to 108, have now completed Taiwan's most modern armored force. These Abrams tanks, deployed directly to the defense line of the 6th Army in the north, create an almost impenetrable barrier on land. Chinese military units will also have to take these powerful tanks into account. But the Abrams are not the only obstacle in the face of Beijing's possible invasion scenario. Because the thousands of TOW and Javelin anti-tank missiles urgently provided by the U.S. will instantly come into play on the battlefield. Lying in ambush in narrow urban combat zones and steep mountainous terrain, Taiwanese soldiers are now preparing to use these portable missiles. They will make the PLA's tank brigades deeply regret entering the streets of Taiwan. The numerical superiority of the Chinese army will become completely meaningless in those narrow streets and in the face of asymmetric warfare tactics. Shoulder-fired anti-tank systems expected to be successfully hidden on the rooftops of buildings can completely halt the advance of PLA armor by striking them from above at their weak points. The picture the U.S. has painted against Chinese expansionism in the Pacific is quite clear. This layered defense strategy, meticulously crafted by Washington, strips Beijing of its hopes for a quick victory. The Chinese army now knows very well that such an invasion would be a bloody military suicide lasting for months. So why did the U.S. suddenly embark on an incredible military breakthrough in the Pacific while the Middle East crisis continues? The massive firepower Washington has amassed in the region is certainly not without reason. The highly aggressive military steps China has taken in the Pacific make the weaving of this U.S. steel shield imperative. Because the Beijing administration recklessly deployed its navy to the field to prove its regional dominance to everyone. The pride of the Chinese Navy, the aircraft carrier Liaoning, passed directly through the Taiwan Strait. This passage was not an ordinary military cruise or a routine naval patrol mission. Beijing's aggressive naval stance was actually a sign of massive strategic panic in the face of U.S. moves. With fully loaded J-15 fighter jets on its flight deck, the Liaoning openly challenged all American bases in the region. The escort destroyers, practically building a wall of steel around the aircraft carrier, were the greatest proof that the drums of war were beating in the Pacific. On the other hand, the Beijing administration had no intention of settling for just an old aircraft carrier. It rapidly deployed exactly 3 massive amphibious assault ships to the South China Sea. These colossal carrier vessels were escorted by modern Type 052D and Type 055 class destroyers. The disputed regional waters were practically placed under a fully equipped Chinese military blockade. With this massive war fleet it assembled, China was sending a clear message to the whole world saying, "I am the regional gendarme." The accompaniment of nuclear-capable submarines to this naval fleet escalated the scale of the threat to the brink of a nuclear war. Housing thousands of Marines, these amphibious ships also form the naval backbone of a potential island-hopping campaign. One of the most crucial points was Beijing's activities that disturbed not only Washington but Tokyo as well. This naval power China amassed in the region suddenly altered its course toward Japan's most sensitive islands. The PLN's warships made an appearance, recklessly patrolling the waters of Japan's remote southern islands. The waters near Japan's Amami Oshima Island were used as if they were the backyard of the Chinese Navy. A very clear naval threat message was delivered to the Tokyo administration from these dangerous waters. The Baotou guided missile destroyer passed through Japan's Yonauni-Iryo waterway without slowing down at all. The Chinese army ruthlessly tested its striking power in distant seas and its ocean logistical capacity with this passage. In the air, too, the military tension between the countries was literally at the breaking point. China's deadliest J-20 stealth fighter jets constantly committed border violations over Taiwanese airspace. These aircraft, completely invisible to enemy radars, were measuring the reaction time of Taiwan's air defense systems in the air in milliseconds. However, The truly most insidious dimension of the matter was the provocative gray zone tactics applied on the sea surface. Massive tonnage vessels belonging to the China Coast Guard brazenly entered restricted waters near Taiwan's Kinmen Island. These ships knowingly, willingly, and openly provoked the Taiwan Coast Guard. These stealthy border violations, especially around Kinmen Island, are actually seen as a silent rehearsal for an impending major war. With these civilian-looking patrol vessels equipped with military-caliber heavy weaponry, China is pushing the operational limits of war. They are instantly measuring the Taiwanese army's reaction time and psychological defense reflexes in their data centers. Even the slightest adverse reaction from Taiwanese patrol boats could be the single spark that legitimizes that anticipated violent invasion for China. Beijing's relentless, unprecedented military expansionism certainly did not go unanswered by other actors. One of these actors is Japan, the giant of the Pacific that has been in a deep sleep for years, thinking that its turn would come after Taiwan. Tearing its own constitutional limits to shreds, the Tokyo administration stepped onto the stage of war. Sai Takaichi completely threw the pacifist defense doctrine she had adhered to for decades into the trash. Japan stood against China as a fully equipped and aggressive war machine, armed to the teeth. This military awakening experienced by Japan became undeniably the greatest breaking point seen in the Pacific balance since World War II. By stretching its peaceful policy that had lasted for decades, the Tokyo administration proved to the whole world that it is ready for the fiercest military struggle. Even the Japanese people's historical antipathy toward war gave way to a relentless national arms race in the face of the massive threat of the Chinese army right at their doorstep. The fleets of fighter jets in the sky underwent a massive transformation. The Misawa Air Base within Japan's borders was turned into the most intimidating American-Japanese military fortress on the Asian continent. Old-generation F-16s that had passed their combat expiration dates were ruthlessly decommissioned from the fleets. In their place, exactly 48 state-of-the-art American-made F-35A stealth fighter jets were deployed. Not relying solely on American aircraft, Japan quickly pressed the button to establish its own independent F-35 fleet. With the purchase of exactly 147 aircraft, they will officially possess the largest stealth fighter fleet outside the U.S. These F-35 aircraft are not just ordinary military jets flying in the sky during aerial combat. They operate as technological command centers, completely invisible on enemy radar, and flying connected to each other via a massive data network. In a potential clash, these jets possess tremendous technology that will blind even China's most advanced air defense systems. They can detect the Chinese Army's J-20 aircraft in the system the moment they take off from the runway at their airbase and instantly hunt them down in the air. The Japanese Navy finally broke out of that peaceful and secure shell it had been hiding in for years. The JS Asahi military destroyer descended right into the heart of the South China Sea, which is in the middle of the crisis. It delivered a very harsh and concrete military slap to the Chinese administration's arrogant claim of, "This is my sea alone." Another well-equipped Japanese destroyer, the J-Suchi, fearlessly sailed alone through the Taiwan Strait, the actual epicenter of the crisis. This move literally drove the Beijing military administration mad with rage. Japan is no longer just floating its destroyers and warships in Pacific waters. They are also turning all their strategic islands, big and small, into impenetrable, deadly missile fortresses. The strategic Ryukyu Islands chain in the Pacific was equipped with the newest generation of coastal missiles and early warning radars. Missiles newly deployed, particularly on the islands of Amami, Oshima, and Mako, have created a deadly choke point in the vast ocean. The PLN's exit doors from those narrow straits to the open Pacific waters have been tightly locked via these islands. Advanced electronic warfare stations built on these strategic islands have been upgraded to a capacity that can instantly collapse all communication networks of Chinese ships on the horizon. Japan now stands as the most proactive regional military power, blocking China's regional maritime expansion on the front lines with its missiles. However, what truly makes the Chinese Army's job in the region impossible is not just Tokyo's individual armament. It is the unification of all these powerful Pacific actors under the U.S. military umbrella to form a massive joint war machine. The Washington administration united all its key military allies in the Pacific under a single military command and control chain. Day by day, it mercilessly tightened this suffocating military encirclement around the Chinese Navy. The U.S.'s true strategic masterpiece was this flawless network of military alliances. They did not just protect the island of Taiwan in the Pacific. They established a continuous, thousands of kilometer-long line stretching from Japan to the Philippines. The deadliest nuclear attack submarines of the U.S. Navy were deployed into the pitch-black depths of the Pacific. The Los Angeles-class USS Asheville silently positioned itself in the most strategic waterways of the region. Every surface movement of the Chinese Navy began to be monitored from the bottom of the ocean like an invisible shadow. These nuclear ghost ships await their targets in the darkness of the ocean like perfect ambush hunters. Thanks to advanced hydrophone sonars, they instantly calculate the routes and speeds of Chinese amphibious ships miles away. In short, Beijing is looking at a very different picture right now. The Pacific is no longer Xi's playground. But what do you guys think about this? We await your comments. To make long journeys more enjoyable, we invite you to Spotify, where we present our video content. Presented by TGN. Thank you for choosing us.